So with that, we wanted to bring a speaker, a keynote speaker to the event who has a background, who does an excellent job tying these topics together between energy, environment, ultimately to understand how energy impacts all of our lives. So I would like to introduce Scott Tinker. Scott is amongst many things, he's the director emeritus of the Texas Economic Geology Group. I'll misstate that. But I think Scott's, what he is wonderful at is articulating what is truly unique about low-cost, reliable energy and how that impacts our day-to-day lives, how that impacts and helps alleviate energy poverty around the world. So with that, I will turn it over to Scott.
All right. Well, there's one good thing about going before Lee Bryce. I'm going to pretend like everybody coming in is here to see me. And definitely better than going after Lee Bryce, because I would know just the opposite. They were all leaving. I don't like this title. It's not my title. I gave a talk in London last fall, and that's the title they assigned, and everybody here liked it. Somebody says, I'm going to be honest with you, I start listening for bullshit. Hey, I'm going to have an honest conversation here. Well, all right, what's that mean? So let's try, and you can be the judge of that. I'm going to start with this little thought that we love our energy security. We need economic security, and we want low emissions, environmental security. So affordable energy, reliable energy, and low emissions energy. That's what we want. And people in the world now are pushing for this thought of 100% low emissions. And when you do that, you get kind of zero of everything else. And that's a challenge. The reality is there's trade-offs in the real world. We understand that, especially out here in the Permian Basin, where I've been coming since 1982. And it's good to be back. I call that the radical middle. That's where all the action is. It's not simple. And I've been lucky to see the world. I've been in over 60 countries. They're color-coded here for you by number of visits. And met a lot of people. We made a couple big feature documentary films, one on energy transition, but it was released in 2012, and energy poverty. So these pictures come from some of that. This man about my age in Ethiopia, he had tears in his eyes when he was telling me his kids and grandkids and great-grandkids were in school for the very first time. They'd never had that coming out of the bush. And we go over to Nepal, we meet Sana Kanchi. She's cooking indoors with wood, like 2.8 billion people in the world still do. And you go to the local SETI Memorial Hospital and watch little kids die from breathing particulates. Like 3 million people every year die from this, just indoor smoke, and moms and mostly kids. Come back to Africa to this city of Kibra. It's a slum outside of Nairobi. This is a church with dangling light bulbs that doubles as a school, and these kids are coming home in their uniforms across mounds of pollution and garbage, but they're going to school. Take you to Vietnam in the film when we meet Than, who's carrying her crippled son across this plank from that red shack every morning, again, to get him into a school. Over and over, the theme repeats. India is some of the most severe poverty I've ever seen. And wealth, a huge disparity there. And we'll bring you back to the Western Hemisphere, to this village of Gunchukwa, where the Awako people live. And we brought First Solar there over a period of 8 days. In fact, a friend of mine who was on this trip is here. Sterling's in this audience with Chevron. And we spent 8 days installing that. We can zoom in, but you meet the kids and the parents, and half these kids will die before they become adults. Today's world, of a tooth infection or diarrhea or something that wouldn't kill us because they don't have modern medicine. So that last night we flipped that light on, the mamos, and it was incredible. They saw each other for the first time at night, ever, except over a fire in their own village. So here's this world. It's a pretty big one. And I'm not going to talk about ESG today, other than this moment. The environment matters to these people. Soil, water, local air pollution. Social, give me a school maybe, or some health care, governance. How about getting me out from under this autocrat? And there's a remarkable amount of hope I found as I've traveled in this world, because they see a future that's optimistic and hopeful as compared to some of our kids in the West who are pessimistic and fearful, and they're protesting against capitalism and democracy, the very thing that allows them to protest, okay? It's confused, and then you see other protests going on from different sectors in the West, massive agriculture, farmers coming into cities all around, and it's just created this division and anger in our rich world, which is the thing we have to work to get rid of. There are certain countries in the world that are very happy that we're divided and angry at one another. Poverty is the worst form of violence, Gandhi said that. So when you look at the world, this is income per person around the world, with yellow being severely poor, okay, like $6 a day of income. And those are the least livable cities I just put on there. Guess where they are? Where it's poor. And here's the most livable cities, blue on blue, where it's rich. Okay, so when you start to think about the emerging economies, the ones that are just getting started, they live in poverty, energy poverty. They need something affordable, something just to start and allow them to begin to progress. And then the developing world has some energy, but it's not secure to them. It comes and goes. The electricity comes and goes. The fuels come and go. They need reliable energy. And this turns out to be about 5 billion people in the world. About 60% of the world's population living in energy poverty. These are big numbers. I put out a piece talking about that, net zero poverty, which is what we're aiming for. And finally, the rich world, us, we want it clean. We want climate security. We want that to be clean. Well, what does clean even mean anymore? People say it. I think they're talking about mostly emissions. But when you think about the land, the air, and the water, where's the cleanest air in the world? The green countries, where it's rich. Where's the dirtiest air that you breathe where it's poor because they can't afford to clean it up? When you don't make money and have a healthy economy, you don't work on the environment, you have other basic needs. So here we sit with this really diverse set of circumstances around the world. Energy security varies across the globe tremendously. And it creates this paradox. Energy won't end poverty, but I can't get out of poverty without some energy. And that's what we need to start thinking about. It's time to power the people of the world, access for everybody. And there's no reason why it shouldn't be happening. So look, we used to cook indoors, right? With wood and warm ourselves thousands of years ago. The first form of energy is the sun. It grew hay, and hay drove the vehicles, ox and horses and mules. And then we captured the motion of wind. This isn't the newest, this is the oldest energy. And water motion, and did useful work with that, built bigger dams, killed whales, got oil, and lit our homes. And this is all the old energy in the world. And then we found coal. Coal is dense carbon. We could burn that, boil water, make steam, turn a turbine, run a generator, and light our homes. And it hasn't been that long that light has been around in our homes. Grandparents kind of thing. And then hydrocarbons, liquid, carbon and hydrogen. Refine it, put it in our vehicles, and that changed the world. And then methane, CH4, and finally nuclear. Okay, so here we are with the new energy, the newest forms of energy. Yet we still have Sanakanchi cooking indoors with wood. Almost a third of the world is still doing this. And that's the great challenge. Why am I showing you this? Because this is a big deal in energy. This is about energy density. Through time, we've gone from dung to nuclear, which is 1 million times denser by weight than other things. Okay? And this is the generation. And to the left of dung is lithium-ion batteries. Okay? They're a lot less dense than dung. The thing you charge your cell phone with and that we want to charge all our cars with, right? So dense energy drives modern societies, and that's what's been evolving. Now take out the nuclear so we can kind of see a scale. Methane's pretty cool. A lot, sulfur really, SOx, NOx, mercury, particulates. Yes, CO2 when you burn it, and methane, but a lot less than other solid fuels. And where does hydro and geothermal and other things fit? Well, you don't weigh them. You can't do this on a specific density basis. So they sit somewhere down in here, and Václav Smil came up with a scale called surface power density, how much energy per unit area, and you can see where those fit relative to dense fuels. And we have names for them, renewable and thermal, clean and dirty. How many young people here lean clean and dirty, right? It's a little judgmental. So you created your own terms, intermittent and reliable. Yeah, perfect. Weather dependent and firm. We got all sorts of terms. Let's just call them electrons and molecules. Make electricity with all the stuff on the left. We need molecules to do a lot of work, like making cement and steel. Tremendous amount of heat for that. Ammonia for our fertilizers, molecules, plastics, molecules. We're not going to electrify everything. It's a silly concept. We need electricity, but we're not going to electrify everything. So I said to Joe Manchin's climate hearing a few years ago, we got to be completely factual and factually complete. Now that's not easy. What does that mean? Well, here's the data in the world. This is the actual energy production. Coal and oil are still going up. They're dense. They make a lot of CO2 when you burn them. Natural gas is going up tremendously. So is nuclear still. Dense, less CO2, and then everything else is growing as well. Not dense, doesn't make much CO2. It's trade-offs. In this real world, as we add energy, it's trade-offs. See the Great Recession of 2009, we were just talking about it over here. The world went into recession, we didn't consume as much energy. And COVID, we dipped a little deeper, but we're already back to where we were, consuming more energy. Nothing changed structurally. We consume more coal and oil than everything else in the world combined by a lot still today in the world. Nothing has gone down. No form of energy has gone down. Transition isn't happening. We're adding energy. It's energy addition. So look, there's three kinds of people in the world. Those who are good at math and those who aren't. So which of the three are you? We'll just do a little simple kind of mathematical arithmetic here. It's completely factual that solar and wind are growing faster than all the other forms of energy. There's the data. Exponential growth starting to go linear. It's a rate. What would make it factually complete when you scale it? It's right in the data. There are solar and wind. And we got a lot of wind out here in West Texas. It's all in this thing. About 10% of the growth in energy demand since solar and wind started is from solar and wind. 10% of the growth, not the base. Demand is incredible. It's growing faster than solar and wind by a lot. So what else is there if it's not those? Well, coal and gas. And over 60 years, they've decreased 1% in terms of the mix, and both have gone up tremendously. 1%. And gas has grown faster than coal. Why coal? Thought coal was dead. Well, China. China gets more than half of its total energy, not electricity, total energy from coal. And it's not slowing down. You're building a coal plant a week in China. It's big ones still, okay? China pledged to strictly control coal, but they haven't, because they also pledged to make cheap electricity and grow their economy and make our stuff. So how about India? India passed China in population just a year ago. Here's India. Same population, plus or minus 1.4 billion each. But India consumes less than a quarter of the energy that China does. I just shrunk it there for you. Why? Well, because China makes more money per person. GDP per capita is 5x India. What does India want to do? What China has done. Watch close on this graph. As we slide into the left a quarter of a century, look familiar? Right where China was. And if they do it how China did with coal, the atmosphere is going to get a lot more CO2 in it. Maybe other things, nuclear, natural gas, solar, wind, hydro, some other mix of fuels. Yet, what's India doing? Coal. All right? Fastest growth in 33 years by coal. Mr. Modi says, hey, don't lecture us about climate change to the G20. You did it on coal, UK, US, Germany, China. We're going to do it. Coal hit a record last year, 2023, the record amount in the world. And it was led by China and India. Now, the rich world has come down in coal. We've cut it in half. And here's Asia. And here's the rest of the world. Not much. Not yet. Why? And it's not just China and India. Bangladesh, Vietnam, Pakistan. Everybody's using coal because it's affordable and reliable. It's an Asian story today. Unless you're Germany and you lose the gas from Russia, what did Germany do to keep secure? They ramped up coal 13%. The cleanest thinking economy in the world. Ramped up coal, and they shut down their last 3 nuclear reactors at the same time. You can't make this up. Climate scientists were aghast, and they should be. But this is kind of the weird political dynamic. This is the punchline. Leaders prioritize energy security over climate security. Every single time. It's not what they say, it's what they do. We do. Energy security, economic security, every time. Let's lay natural gas on top of coal, global, at the same scale. Now, natural gas has grown from, it's a coal to gas ratio of like 39% to over 90% gas to coal ratio. And gas will pass coal. And gas is growing everywhere in the world. It's a global story. When you look at it now, the oil and gas component, it's gone up, like incredibly in terms of actual units, and only lost 1% of the growth over 60 years. These are the regions in the world where natural gas is produced. We lead in North America the consumption. We lead. Here's the production in those same regions. Only 2 regions in the world consume more gas than they produce: Asia and Europe. All right? They need options. They won't produce it in Europe, and Asia doesn't have as much. They need options in natural gas. What have we done? What have you done? Grown it here. This is the shale gas basins, and not that long ago, 2007, growing, and this is the gas from oily basins growing, and here's conventional gas. So it's an up and to the right story in the U.S. gas production. Now let's not get too sanguine, and one of the panelists mentioned this, and I appreciated that. Conventional gas has been coming down in the U.S. and plateauing. 3 basins have rolled over: Fayetteville, Barnett, Utica. And in the oil basins that also produce gas, they've kind of plateaued 4 of the 5. There's only 3 basins that are actually up and to the right out of those 10. Haynesville had a renaissance, and of course out here, and keep it going. So 3 out of 10. I gave a talk in D.C. called Houston, we have a problem. It's not, you got to have the infrastructure, you got to continue to have the investments and the capital, and here's the Permian making a great contribution. Same story in oil. Now, Asia consumes the most oil of any region in the world. Here's the production. The only 2 regions in the world that consume a lot more oil than they produce: Asia and Europe. They need options to oil. Enter the electric car. Says it on the license plate, Electrons. And they're charging it with diesel, okay? These are diesel generators making electricity to charge an inefficient battery. You can't make this crap up. Now, this is Australia, so it's not representative, but it's funny. This is representative. You've seen the EV sales go up to almost 18% of total vehicle sales. Now, what's a vehicle? Doesn't mean a car. It's a scooter, 2-wheeler, 3-wheeler. Anything with a battery and a motor is called a vehicle. It's fine. Where are those vehicles being sold? You know now. Where? China and Europe. Who needs options? And China charges theirs with coal. You've seen the data. And here's the U.S. total EV sales, and the rest of the world, hardly any. 85% of EVs are made and sold in Europe and Asia. They need it, okay? 40 million sold to date. Now, it's going to take some charging stations if the rate continues. How many charging stations? I don't know. I didn't have accurate numbers, so I just made this one up. Studies are showing accurate numbers aren't any more useful than the ones you make up. How many studies showed that? 87, all right? So let's make up a number. We're going to electrify half the world's vehicle fleet by 2040. There's 1.4 billion vehicles in the world today. Let's electrify 700 million of them by 2040. I can fit it's going to take 300 million charging stations if we were to do that and charge them all. And I can fit the 40 million in there really neatly and go up to 700 million. That would be incredible, by the way. You know what this is? The floor bed of a Tesla S. How many batteries are in it? Like your cell phone. 7,000 in one car. Let's do some arithmetic. Let's do 5,000, a little smaller than the S, nice car. 5,000 times 700 million vehicles is 3.5 trillion batteries that wear out. Where are we going to get the stuff to make 3.5 trillion batteries? We have 100 billion in the world today. Billion, not trillion. So we got to start thinking, and this is why Germans are thinking twice about EVs. Auto executives are kind of cooling off. The Kia boss said they're not viable. Ford's backing off them, losing billions. I saw a piece recently, $63,000 per truck Ford lost on the Lightning truck. Italy is pushing back to Europe on these things. Volkswagen did a poll. Only 2% of the people wanted one. It just goes on and on, okay? The battery plants themselves, Tesla's shares are tumbling. Layoffs this week. I saw something in, I think, the Times, peak Tesla. Maybe. Honda, GM, they scrap plans. No one wants to buy a used one because the battery, you got to replace it at some point. This isn't just trivial stuff. And then there's this. Sorry, that's a little gratuitous, but it's pretty damn funny. It's not funny if you're stuck in one, by the way. There's a reason I can't check my lithium-ion battery in the plane. They start on fire on occasion, and it's really hard to put them out. Now, CO2 emissions, that's why we're doing this, right? Turns out it ain't quite as simple as you might think. In fact, to make them, more CO2 than to make a combustion engine. Why? Stuff. Kilogram per vehicle of the metals on the right, 500% more on an electric vehicle than a combustion engine. Not in the car, in the fuel, in the battery. So you can be a proud driver of an EV in Colorado and say, ex-polluter. How many think mining's green? Raise them up proudly. I'm a geologist. I like mining. It's not green, okay? I took this picture in Michigan, kilowatt on the Tesla, a kilowatt of electricity to charge it. And where does it come from? Well, it turns out it takes 600% more metals for solar and wind than coal and gas. It's not judgment, it's physics. Just collecting low-density energy just takes more stuff. So yeah, in Alberta, they get it. License plate says coal-powered on the Tesla. The Lambo doesn't give a crap. It just says CO2. Just let's do it. All right, transportation optionality. Yeah, if you're in a city and not driving far, get an EV or a hybrid. Charge it up if you have a plug. It's quieter, you don't have emissions, smaller. As the vehicle gets larger, you're just hauling too much weight in the fuel. Mid-sized vehicles, fuel cells, hydrogen, compressed natural gas. The bigger they get, liquids. You gotta have that density to move around in some of these things. Yet, here we are in Colorado with no oil on the license plate. No tires, no plastics, no electronics, no knowledge, okay? You might as well say, I love mining. Colorado's a proud mining state. Maybe my friend, and he is a friend, John Hickenlooper, said, will bring it back. No. In fact, Treasury's handing out bags of money for you to buy an EV now, and new rules coming out to force this to happen. It's just phenomenal. I put out a piece called Limiting Options is a bad idea. Markets don't like it. Okay, they like optionality. And it comes from somewhere. So the 3 leading oil and gas producing countries in the world, we're right in there on both. Again, the prior panel, don't get too sanguine about it. It doesn't last forever unless we continue to evolve. And here's the lead producing countries, top 3 for the metals that go into solar, wind, and batteries. That's where it's extracted. Watch close. Who processes the metal? Here we go. China. Brilliant. Belt and Roads, other investments, bought the processing rights. Who needs options to oil and gas? Who needs the solar, wind, and batteries? China and Asia. They've tightened their grip on graphite, bought half the lithium mines in the world, controls the global supply chains. We better get it. I'm not judging this, but we better understand we're moving kind of from us and OPEC for fuel, for vehicles, to China. And they're happy to have that done. Groups, and I go back on that one. California, they're mandating EVs. You can't mine lithium in the Salton Sea. Maine, largest deposit, geologists in the room, and spodumene, can't mine it, mandating EVs. Number of states increasing EV mandates is growing. The irony here is very thick. What's wanted is not the will to believe, but the will to find out. That's the exact opposite. So here's the reality of energy. And I said this first to a group of 1,100 college students at a TED Talk. We went kind of through this and said, look, biofuels, you got to grow it, process it, move it around, and burn it. It's not green. Solar, wind, batteries, dams, you got to mine the stuff, make it, put it somewhere, move it around, the electricity, and then when it wears out, you dump it in a landfill. I was thinking in Spain during our first one, where are these panels going to go when they wear out? Have you seen a solar field after a hailstorm? It isn't a good picture. And they wear out normally anyway. Lithium mines, you can see them from space in South America. Here's the footprint of one wind turbine. Rebar, going to be filled with concrete to keep it from tipping over. Where do the blades go when they wear out? No, we don't recycle them. That's an earth mover in Wyoming, just 100 of them cut into thirds. Here's Sweetwater. Have you been by and seen these? Take the trip. We're just stacking them up at the surface. They're big and they wear out. Oil, gas, coal, all of it. Okay? You mine, you manufacture, you drill, you refine it, you move it, you burn it. All of it happens. It's done better environmentally in regulated countries than unregulated ones. Coal mines are a big deal. Coal power plants, a lot of emissions and challenges. Hydraulic fracturing site, here's nuclear reprocessing in La Hague in France. Again, all of these are in our films. Here's the reality. When you have to get stuff from the earth, you make it into an energy collector of some kind, and you either burn it in the atmosphere or dump it in there over and over, it's not renewable. There's no renewable energy. We just are saying this word, but it's not renewable, okay? Every form of energy has trade-offs. We can keep telling our kids there's pretty energy and there's ugly energy, all right? But we're not doing them any favors. This is funny, come on. I saw this and I had to use it. CO2 emissions, the result of all this. Rich world, we've been flat in our emissions for 40 years. Doubled the economy. Asia's emissions have gone way up, and the rest of the world's just getting started. Again, Asia emits more CO2 than all the rest of the world combined now. Why? It's not because they're bad. Here's why. Above the red line, countries consume more stuff than they produce, and below it, they're producers. The United States produces 5 billion tons of CO2 every year making our stuff, but we need more than that. China makes 10 billion tons, twice us, of CO2, but they're producers. The non-OECD, the non-rich world, are producing countries. The rich world is consuming countries, Europe and us mostly. We say, hey, send us our stuff, okay? Send me that donut on an Amazon truck, one item at a time. Really efficient. And what's that effectively saying? Make the CO2. You make the CO2, make our stuff, we'll be green. That's not green. There's only one atmosphere. This is just a shell game. States are doing it. Companies are buying offsets. Countries? From who? Tech alone consumes more electricity than all the solar and wind in the world. From who? Intentions might be good. These guys had good intention. They're putting these posts in, keep people from parking next to the building. They forgot where they parked. They are not getting out, okay? And policy does this all the time. Oh, it's a good idea. No, it's a terrible idea. We can't get out. It's hard to reduce emissions. Some combination of tech, price, scale, time frame, they all have to happen. Here are some of the big ones. And markets are driving natural gas and nuclear replacing coal. That's working in the wealthy world. Hydrogen and geothermal, hydro, a lot of government investment, carbon capture, direct air capture, nature solutions, a lot of government investment to make these start to work. Solar, wind, and batteries, kind of coming down the list. And finally, do more with less. We consume a hell of a lot of energy in this country per person. We didn't have to change our lives much, and we could lower that some, okay? And those are the wedges. That's about it, and it's not easy. We're well aware of the benefits of reducing, climate benefits. Are there any unintended outcomes? Well, a few. Higher prices. You know, this is, for electricity, we've seen it. We see it in Europe. California, much higher prices. Industries are damaged from non-level global playing field. You can't levelize that out, no matter how hard we try, even with border taxes. Wealthy nations, we're feigning green while somebody else makes our stuff, okay? Mining, manufacturing, these aren't green. These have big impacts on the environment. Universities and others unreliable grids are happening. We're seeing it in Texas. We can talk about that, But when big winter storms hit, what goes away first? Okay? And what do you need to back it up? And finally, well-intended policies that eliminate options. So these are real issues that are happening. As with most things, there are trade-offs with net zero emissions. And we're not talking about them. We're just acting as if that is the goal. They got to be openly discussed and carefully considered. So here's our leaders, I'm convinced, of all different stripes. Today's energy, they're hanging out, and they're going to go to tomorrow's energy the way this person does. Watch close. Tomorrow's energy, here we go, in flip-flops. Right? That's not a transition. That's a leap of faith. If they don't land it, it's over. Over. Okay. Not a good idea. Let's just agree on one thing. This is an idiot. This is an idiot. Don't do this. All right, what is transition? It's adding energy for quite a while longer and reducing emissions. We have to do both. So I'll run this scenario out for you. There's a million of them, infinite number into the future. Coal going down, oil coming down some, natural gas and nuclear growing, everything else growing. Here's the actual energy consumption during that time period. We roll it over into the future because we're starting to see population start to slow in its growth. This is called business as usual. Look at the right side. There's a lot of oil and gas in that, and it scares kids. Coal, they feel like they're getting run over by they're running in the bulls. They were told oil and gas will be gone in 10 years, and it's not, luckily. This is the winner of the last photo taken contest. Okay, there's a lot of runner-ups I could share with you. So take a look at this. I'm going to lay the exact same data on this, but as a percentage. This is the energy mix now, instead of units. You can't even see the COVID dimple. The left side of that looks nothing like the right side. It's not business as usual. Coal and oil, cut in half. Gas and nuclear growing, everything else growing a lot. It's carbon to hydrocarbons to methane to hydrogen to uranium and thorium. It's a physics driver of density. And you see partnerships forming between dispatchable energy and intermittent to become reliable. But if I get rid of the coal, oil, and gas and nuclear, what's left? It's not reliable. There's only 4 things left on the right side, and they're intermittent. This is not a plan. It's a bad idea. So here we sit, again, with our income graph, fading into the world at night, the lights at night, and I'm going to lay the different energy mixes around the world on there for you and scale them to be proportional to consumption. Asia is consuming half the world's energy. They make our stuff. If we get rid of coal and oil, get rid of gas and nuclear, what's left? Get rid of hydro, because it kind of messes up the environment. 6%. I dim the world's light by 94%. That doesn't look good to me. That looks like the past, not the future. So turn them on. We need these things. We need them all for various reasons because it does a lot of global good. And you can read them as I go through them, okay? These are the big issues in the world. Bring those all together and it starts to change the world. Secure energy changes the world. So let me wrap it up here. Nations need secure energy. Dense energy is secure. Humans need both electricity and molecules. No source of energy has gone down. All forms have pros and cons. Human flourishing is vital. We need more energy than that, and we need optionality in it. All that is in me comes from fear, all the ill that is in me. So what's the answer, Doc? Well, it's not binary. It's not clean and dirty. A lot of variables in that thing. Energy security underpins economic security. It drives our economies and allows us to invest in the environment. Fear has no place in this. Got to get rid of fear. It's destructive. So let's wipe that out. Quit scaring our kids. Emerging economies, they've got to have something to get started. Developing economies are trying to grow into become developed economies, okay? That's what's happening in the world. We've got to accelerate economic growth to solve this problem. We've got to grow that radical middle. We've got to see advance human flourishing and reduce environmental impacts. That will result in that. So I'll leave you with a few final musings. You can negotiate with physics. You can try. No one has a patent on the truth. I don't. Cancel canceling and get rid of the fear that's out there. join forces with the industry across sectors. We know we need one another, and make humility cool again. Let's try a little bit of that. I'll leave you with some free resources. You can shine your cameras at this because they're all out there, and really happy to be with you today. Keep doing what you do. We need this industry for a very long time. Thanks.
We are fossil fueled.